I think human beings can handle a lot. But if there's one thing we are really not good at handling, it's uncertainty. That's a quote from Dr. Emily Anhalt, an emotional fitness expert and very charismatic speaker. My name is Reverend Carol Ann Rubin, and I am here to discuss with you the concept of uncertainty and standing together in the questions. So we know uncertainty exists, right? It's everywhere, all the time. It's inherent in our human condition. We, brilliant humans, come up with ingenious ways of avoiding the inalterable truth that control is an illusion. We come up with ways to take care of things and bolster our sense of control. We have it all covered. We know what we can expect. We can prepare for the future. We know how to be safe. Well, that's all those things, right? We're good, right? We're good. But then the future happens. The future. What's that quote? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Or there's a book by that comedian, I've forgotten her name. It's called And God Said Ha. And it was all about the plans she made and how she felt that God just laughed and laughed at her plans. So we set things in motion, we make plans, we look to the future, we set our intentions and we go. And then, seemingly without warning, the universe serves up unexpected things, one after the other. Unexpected job circumstances, new members of your family, new people in the community, new environmental changes, global pandemic. Or how about a reminder that racism is alive and well and living in my neighborhood, in my family, and even takes up space in my head. Suddenly that sense of awareness of the world and my place in it as a force for good can become uncomfortable. And I am fraught with unexpected challenges, and unclear paths seem to pop up and close all around me, everywhere. And I don't know if you can feel it out there, but in here, I feel that constriction. It actually manifests in my chest. It's a tightness, and I can feel it. But what if we flip the idea? What if this state of unknowing, of uncertainty, of absolute uncontrollability is absolutely required to create the changes we need, the things we crave? What if this is uniquely designed for us to move in? Eckhart Tolle says, when you become comfortable with uncertainty, infinite possibilities open up in your life. Did you feel that? I felt that. My chest actually expanded. I felt it in my body. The idea of the opening of possibilities. It's a physical response to that concept. More seems possible, and I don't even need to know how. I just know that it's possible. So these folks are both right? Both of these quotes resonate, maybe not at the same time, maybe some at the same time, but both of these things resonate within my body, my physical form. They resonate, and they feel true to me. So how do we balance that? So in my personal life, going back many, many years, I believe I have always been aware of and played with the concept of being, of control as an illusion. I was born into a household of somewhat, wrangling cats, chaos. There were many, many beings already there, and it always felt incredibly out of control, like nobody was really in charge and nobody was really the one making the decisions, but everybody was completely safe. And there was never a question of whether or not we were going to be okay, no matter what happened. And then about 15 years old, when I was in high school, my high school years, I was absolutely clear on the concept that we, as a species, humanity, we were going to destroy the planet and kill one another in a nuclear war. I was clear on this concept. I just didn't see how anything else was going to happen. And I didn't think I was even going to see 30. So what I resolved to do is instead of planning for my future and looking forward to bonding in a long-term relationship and maybe having children, all the things that my family did, I decided that right here and right now is what I have. Right here and right now is where I get to participate. And so I made a conscious decision to be as present and genuine and loving as I possibly could. And from that space, from that point in my life, I have cultivated and benefited from some amazingly loving relationships because of that. So out of a sense of despair of the end, the end is nigh, I was able to create imminently loving relationships right now that would nurture and formulate my person for years to come. By the time I did hit 30, I was jubilant at discovering that I was pregnant, a condition that I thought I had brought about and created with much hope and intention. And almost immediately, I was struck with the reality that I no longer was in control of even my body. I did my very best to choose wisely and take very good care of myself, to eat carefully and do all the things that were recommended. But I knew I wasn't really in control of this ship anymore. My body had been hijacked in the most wonderful way, but control was hardly part of it. And that I would never be the same. I would be uniquely transformed. And that children would come and develop and be born of their own accord. I could create the best possible soil, as it were, the best possible medium for it. I could create a hopeful atmosphere and make good choices, whatever those are, which we're shifting every week. But the rest I was going to have to open to the possibility and trust and gather my folks around me to support me. I will be forever grateful that the universe served up parenthood to me in exactly the way it was supposed to unfold. I could never have planned for it to be the way that it is, but it is magical, and at least mostly because I recognized early on I wasn't really in control. I had my role, and I wholeheartedly embraced it, but I was just a piece of the puzzle, and I wasn't really in control. Later on, when you're thinking about this, try to imagine some of the times in your life when you realized you didn't have the control you imagined you should or would, and how you dealt with that. What did you do? What options did you have? How many resources did you call upon? That will help you to determine what your resources are. It's a fun exercise. I have a million of them. I could spend many hours doing this. So I'll move on to many, many years later. The first time I was in a Science of Mind 1 class. It was the very first time I met in a group of people who explored ideas without trying to convince me of anything. I was invited to think about my thoughts in a way that I never had before. I didn't think about my thoughts. I just thought them, or they thought me. But I didn't think about what I was creating with my thoughts. Not really. Not in this reflective way where I can really think about where my thoughts come from and what my choices are and how my thoughts reflect my choices and vice versa, and how the things in my world show up. My experience is literally created by my thoughts and my thought patterns and my assumptions about myself and the world. So I'm invited to think about my thoughts in all these new ways, but no one is trying to convince me of anything. I am not asked to accept a single thing except my inherent value. That my voice counted as soon as I walked in that room. And that was transformative. That's a remarkable thing. We learned in this class and in many subsequent classes, to stand together. We listen and hold space for one another's reality. We recognize that each of us is a unique expression of the one, of the divine. We experience the honor of listening to another's truth, someone else's reality shared with you. That's an enormous responsibility and an enormous honor. We practice compassion and support even when we view the exact same question and the exact same circumstances from opposite perspectives. From this place, from this practice, from this way of being together, this is a sacred circle. We learn to honor everyone because they're not separate from you. We recognize that we are all part of one organism, one human planetary organism, and one spiritual body. And from this place, we can come together when things are when we have issues or hopes and wishes or something that needs to be resolved or created. We can come together in a room and encounter dozens of ideas that just aren't possible in any other way until we all come together in that kind of space. We can only rely on our own thinking, and our own thinking is a narrow fraction of what is possible. So what I know about this group is we have created magic out of nothing again and again and again because we come together in this way. And even if one of us responds to the other that person is crazy, what are they thinking? We know that that's just a response. Neither one of those things is true. They're not brilliant and they're not wrong. They are new. It's a new idea. And we have an opportunity to create something that never existed before. Now, this sharing of ideas is not always peaceful. And we have all borne witness recently to just how the ways in which we as a species can be not peaceful with the sharing of ideas. Indeed, there are times when peacefulness isn't tolerated. For example, on April 5th, 1968, the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated, a school teacher named Jane Elliott threw out her lesson plan for the day and devised a new one that would bring home the experience of discrimination to her all-white class. She wanted to give them an experience that they would then be able to utilize to transform their thinking. She devised the now famous blue-eyed, brown-eyed experience, in which she demonstrated favoritism to one group. She divided them into blue eyes and brown eyes, and she demonstrated favoritism toward one group and severe discrimination against the other group in very stark ways that even small school children can read immediately. And it was very intentional. And the children were very interactive in the process. And one group was really denigrated, and the other group could do no wrong. And it was incredibly transformative. And then later in the day, she switched the groups. And she created favoritism for the other group, the one who had been oppressed, and created discrimination for the previously favored group. She switched it up. And one of the things she found was that the group that had been discriminated against first were much kinder to the other group when it was their turn to be favored, because they had just had an experience of being mistreated for a very arbitrary reason. They were able to tap into their compassion because they had just been there. Now you go back several years and we speak of Ruby Bridges. She was a mere 6 years old in 1960 when she walked into an all-white school in New Orleans, Louisiana. She was the very first African-American child to be sent to desegregate an all-white school, and the first attempt to provide equal access to education for all of our children. She was not met with peacefulness and compassion. The school was surrounded by angry white folks who abused this small child all the way in to her school. She had to be escorted inside. Once she got inside, she was greeted by her teacher. And this is what Ruby Bridges decided. You cannot look at a person and tell whether they're good or bad. Evil comes in all shades and colors. That's the lesson I learned from the teacher that looked exactly like those people outside, that threw things, spit, and yelled. She looked exactly like them, but she was different. And I knew that at 6 years old because she showed me her heart. That's what Ruby Bridges, at 6 years old, decided. From that horrible situation she was in, she found the open, compassionate spot, and she made a home there. She made peace there. And she became a great many things, but among them, a civil rights activist. When we are suffering, no matter why, we need each other. We need to stand together during these times, even when we don't agree, especially when we don't agree. We have the tender opportunity to be compassionate, to understand that everyone is fighting a battle we can't see, but that we can be a safe space. We can be the place. We can be the open heart. We can remember that we are not separate from one another. We are but pieces of a single organism. We are a single spiritual body. We can't possibly inflict harm upon someone else or pass judgment upon someone else without it directly affecting ourselves. We can center ourselves. We can center into source, into spirit, and we can tap into the limitless compassion and love from which we are all made. There's a very compelling young man named Prince E.A. He's a motivational speaker, and he has dedicated his life to transforming other people's lives through knowledge. And the knowledge he generally espouses is knowledge of self and connection to spirit. And what he says on this very subject is, once we truly love, we can meet anger with sympathy, hatred with compassion, and cruelty with kindness. Love is the most powerful force on the face of the earth. So what I'm advocating here, and what he's advocating here, Prince E.A., is seeing the oneness, being love. When we get pushed or afraid, ground into the love. Summon that compassion. Open that limitless heart of God to which we all have constant access. It's the safest space there is. From that place, nothing can be harmed. Nothing can touch you. And you become a fountain of all of those attributes of God. Wisdom, beauty, strength, compassion, joy. From that place, we can stand together in the questions. What's next? What is mine to do? What can I learn? How can we move forward? Who needs love and compassion today? We don't do any of this by ourselves. We are not alone, and we are powerful together. Now, not all conflicts carry this much weight. So I'll finish on a little bit lighter note from Rumi, who says, if you are irritated by every rub, how will you become polished? Thank you. Namaste.